For a parent, there must be nothing more terrifying in the world than the thought of losing your child. The idea of here one minute and gone the next, whether it be an abduction or they just simply vanished, it's gotta be a terrifying thing. But what if the missing child is right before you, watched by millions, in fact, yet just out of reach? That has to be a whole new level of madness. Today, we'll talk about the unfortunate tragedy that had all eyes on our victim, and yet nothing could be done. Let's dive into the unfortunate descent of Alfredo Rampi. June 10th, 1981, Fernando Rampi had lost track of his son and had called the police to start a search on their property. 2 hours of searching with the fire brigade and search dogs yielded no trace of the boy. It wasn't until 1:30 in the morning when Officer Giorgio Cervanti leaned over an artisan well and heard one faint word: Mama. The aquifer was 30 centimeters wide and 80 meters deep. And by the time the officers found Alfredo, he was already 36 meters underground level. By 4 a.m., a rescue team was devising plans to lower a plank down to Alfredo and winch him up. But it came back empty since the opening was so small and they couldn't get a plank down to him. They lowered a walkie-talkie down to Alfredo, but he didn't say much. He had a pre-existing heart condition that doctors arriving on the scene informed the men about, and listening to his breathing, they determined that it was twice as fast as normal. To prevent him from dehydrating, they lowered sugar water down into the hole, and he sipped on it periodically. A second attempt to free Alfredo involved digging a parallel shaft next to the well, but the vibrations caused him to slip another 30 meters down, and they had to stop. The story had gotten the attention of the local news and townspeople, and they had all started gathering around to watch the progress. A live broadcast of the story was available to view on TV 18 hours straight. At its peak, around 21 million people were watching the story from home or at the site. Even the Pope sent his prayers, and the President of Italy at the time appeared at the site. Around 11 p.m. on June 13th, volunteer Angelo Lassiri stepped forward to descend into the well. They lowered him down into the aquifer head first, and he complained of how small it was and the mud that was getting in his face and eyes. Moments later, however, Angelo cried out that he saw the boy, and he made a few attempts to try to grab him and pull him free. However, the mud was making things harder to see and grasp, so every time he tried to get a hold of Alfredo, he just kept slipping further down the well. Angelo was in the well for 45 minutes before they pulled him up, battered and bruised, covered in mud, and had to be rushed to the hospital from the experience. Several more of these attempts were made, as volunteers descended into the well, but they all came up empty, with Alfredo slipping further down and the men coming up more worse for wear. At 5 a.m., Donato Caruso descended 63 meters down the well, where he called back up when he found Alfredo. He's not breathing. He's got his head tilted back. He's not breathing. He made several attempts to grab at Alfredo's body, but he couldn't be moved. He was eventually pulled up empty-handed, shivering from the cold. Authorities said that they wouldn't risk anybody else's lives going down into it. A sonar probe was descended into the well the night before, and it picked up no heartbeat. At 6:36 a.m. on June 13th, 3 days after he disappeared, Alfredo was declared dead. One of the 2 physicians on the scene declared that there had been no sign of life for at least 12 hours, stating, "It's unrealistic to expect him to have survived. He's stiff. He's rigid." Alfredo's death was broadcast on live TV, and since the story got such wide coverage, people were quick to point fingers once it was over. The fire brigade was blamed for not having enough coordination and not coming up with a solution fast enough. The landowner who built the well was charged but not convicted. Even Alfredo's father was blamed at some point, saying he pushed Alfredo into the well and threats were sent his way. There were even those who were trying to take advantage of the situation. One, Roberto from Modena, came to Mr. and Mrs. Rampi's house saying he was a medical man, and he knew that Alfredo was in a well near Modena. Eventually, the couple had to give him $20 just to go away. It's pretty alarming how insensitive people can be in the face of grief when it's not their own. The passing of someone should never be a spectacle. It should have been this family's time to grieve and move on, but instead they were the target of some people who wanted to point fingers. I only hope that eventually they found their peace. Thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing for more true crime, and oddities like this are on the way, as well as bad horror movie reviews. Game with me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter, and as always, be well.